Okay, so the argument is we can't ban circumcision because there'll be no way to enforce it. This is an argument made by not so much lay people on the streets as much as it is by the pundit class giving TV interviews and on TV documentaries regarding circumcision.
That the votes are in, and here is the leaderboard. The top question is from Emily, who asks, should male circumcision be made illegal like female circumcision?
OK, so should male circumcision be made illegal? Peter?
No. So my answer is no. It would provide huge difficulties. It would almost certainly be unenforceable. But I do not think that banning it by law would achieve that or bring it forward. Is it possible in a free society to make a law of the kind which you require?
It is utter and total crap. First of all, nobody said anything like this when we outlawed FGM. The ability to enforce this law had absolutely no bearing on its passage, and they've been content to enforce it. Basically, when a case comes along, they'll enforce it. We see the first use of the female genital mutilation law with this new case of Jumana Nagarwala only recently. But I mean, this is how it was done. It's perhaps rather ironic that the more legitimate the channel through which the circumcision takes place, the easier it will be to outlaw. If you have some Islamist Muslims or some Orthodox rabbis, the claim is that they're going to be mutilating the genitals of the children in secret, right? I guess there won't be an effective way to enforce it. Well, with male circumcision, this happens in hospitals. Right? We know who these people are. We know who's doing it. We know exactly where and how it's being done. It's being done by doctors. I mean, doctors, they don't want to lose their $250,000 a year salary, I guess is what I'm saying. They're not, if you outlaw circumcision, they're just not going to do it. And, of course, the other part of the equation is the parents. Now, obviously, this is going to ruffle a lot of feathers. A circumcision ban will probably ruffle a lot of feathers, but at the end of the day, I envision it being essentially enforced fairly quietly. It'll just happen. Parents may or may not inquire about... I mean, obviously, nurses will have to stop harassing families about circumcision, and if the parents do inquire, they'll just be shut down. No, we're not allowed to do that anymore. In fact, I envision a future in which, right on the cusp of the outlawing, or, immediately after, parents will be saying, oh no, we were opposed to circumcision even before the ban came down. That's how forward-thinking we are. There may be some problems. People may complain, well, they already have a kid that's circumcised. How's this going to work? And I grant that's probably not a very easy situation to navigate for the older child. But first of all, let's be clear here. This is not the first time we made a generation-based transition regarding circumcision status. This happened another time in history, when we went from a totally non-circumcising country to a circumcising one. If you are descended from East Coast, Anglo-Saxon landed gentry from the mid-late 1800s, your family may have been circumcising since the late 1800s or early 1900s. If you're the average person, it may have started on your grandfather or great-grandfather between the 40s and the 1960s. If you're from a family that lived in the Appalachian Mountains or in the backwoods of Kentucky on a farm or something, your own father, or maybe you, were the first generation to be circumcised in maybe the 70s or maybe 80s. Apparently it came very, very slowly to the rural areas. People were still, in poor rural areas, people were still being born at home up until much more recently. Such cases are probably rare, but you get what I'm saying. This transition happened at some point in history, and, nobody seemed to wring their hands about it then. So the transition's going to happen. It may be painful, but it's going to have to happen. It's happening regardless, and we just want to expedite the process. Let me get to what I'm proposing. What I am proposing is a blanket circumcision ban on all infant genital modification and mutilation done probably prior to the 18th birthday. Some people have suggested 13 or 14 or something. I don't really like that. I don't like the idea of parents potentially being able to pressure or threaten their kids force them to be circumcised. There was a fairly high-profile legal case in which two parents converted to Judaism and were demanding that their 12 or 13-year-old son get circumcised, and he refused, and this went to court, and this was in America, and the judge intervened on the side of the kid and said that no, this was unacceptable. The parents could not demand that he get circumcised. So a total ban, probably up to the age of 18. I mean, I guess with exceptions for absolute medical reasons. I'm very leery of leaving that, but because the American circumcision industry, medical industry, seems to have a very liberal interpretation of what a medical reason for circumcision is. I would prefer to see it more like Europe, where infections are treated with antibiotics, and phimosis is treated with steroid creams or stretching, or at worst preputioplasty, and frenular breve is treated with frenuloplasty. But as long as we get rid of the gorilla in the room of infant circumcision, I will be absolutely overjoyed. So how will this be enforced? Well, it's very simple. Almost all the children in the country go to some form of school. And if you go to school, you're required to get a physical from a doctor. During that physical, there's often a urogenital exam. And it would be very easy to simply check that there was no, genital modification done. I mean, it's much more obvious on boys than it would be on girls. The recent case of Jumana Nagarwala, this emergency room physician in Detroit that was circumcising girls, the person that noticed it, I believe, was a third-party, unrelated physician who was seeing the girls for a checkup and noticed that their genitalia looked like it had been modified or butchered. And that's how this was exposed. If it's good enough to be used to outlaw female circumcision and enforce the ban, this woman's now going on trial, it is more than adequate to enforce a ban on male circumcision. And keep in mind, physicians are already mandatory reporters for all different kinds of sexual abuse and physical abuse of children, so there's no change in practice or the infrastructure and the channels through which this would be reported. It would simply be another thing that would have to be looked out for during physical exams of children. So this is my take on how we might use the medical system and children's physical exams, which are necessary for school, to screen cases of genital mutilation, as we already use to intercept cases of female genital mutilation. We can also use it to stop and prosecute and basically end male circumcision and male genital mutilation. So tell me what you think. Tell me about it in the comments section. Thank you. Bye-bye.